August 7th, Friday. I am 25 weeks pregnant, will be 26 weeks tomorrow. And my husband and I just had one of what I would consider one of the most adulting conversations I've ever had in my whole life. I have had a career, I have run a business, I have purchased a home, I have gotten married, I have gotten pregnant, and out of all those things, this conversation we had seems like, oh, this is adult stuff. This is real adult conversations. Now, I felt this way when we bought our first home. That really made me want to shit my pants. Like signing the lease on the first home and thinking of how much debt I would be in for how long, like really made me want to throw up. But it's also because of my relationship with money and how I feel about debt and the fears that I had around money that have changed since then. So you're like, what did you talk about? What's the conversation? We had a meeting today about trusts, assets, wills, talking about who we want to be the guardian of our kids if we were to both die tomorrow, who we want all our assets and our money to go to if we die, who, like all the scenarios, all those worst case life scenarios that you don't want to spend your time thinking about. We have to not only think about, not have to, we get to not just think about them, but actually put in place structure for how we would want those moments in life to unfold. And then even going further, when we pass away from old age, like not if we were to, something terrible would happen, but if our life, when our life goes on and on forever, we pass from old age, what then, happens to our assets and our things for our kids and our kids' kids? Or what if George passes away and I get remarried? Do our assets then only belong to me, or do then I get to do whatever I want with my new marriage if I were to get remarried, which I can't even, this woman was giving us these scenarios, and I'm thinking to myself, if somebody were to just ask me what I would want to do with my money, my assets, and my will, I would think very clear cut, everything goes to my husband, everything goes to my kids, she's like, but what if? And she started giving all these other scenarios that I'm sure of her years and years of experience, she's saying this because it happens. I'm like, I wouldn't have even thought about those scenarios. I wouldn't have even thought that it was important to think about that scenario, because the feeling I'm in right now that's not even anywhere in my future, I think. But then that leads me to believe I have control over my future, which I don't. And of course, you've seen movies where people are like, I never thought this would happen to me, or you see interviews or documentaries or real life stories of people thinking, I never thought this would happen to me, but I damn sure wish that I had put structure in place. So here we are talking about all these worst case scenarios about the rest of our life, and it could happen tomorrow, guys. That shit is real. My husband could pass away tomorrow. I could be widowed with a child tomorrow. What would we have done if we didn't have structure? Of course we would figure it out. Of course people figure it out. Yes, of course. But think about this. Think about the trauma that people experience when in those scenarios, when those big life moments happen that you don't plan for. Why would you want to have not have a structure in place so that you feel like you don't have to make crazy decisions, big decisions in that moment where you're already going through so much emotional stress? How much more simple would it be if there was structure in place so that when those moments do happen, you can say, oh my God, we've talked about this. We've worked on this. I feel comforted knowing that this is the plan, this is what's going to happen, and I feel like I don't have to use my brain power to think about logistics, to think about paperwork, to think about money, to think about guardians, to think about this. And I know because I've had conversations with people who don't have these conversations, who don't set this structure, and how much pain that causes when the trauma happens. And I'm not even talking about unprecedented traumas. I'm talking about old age, like people passing, and then that person passed from old age that didn't have a will or didn't have anything set in place for their family. So now the whole family is left up to making a decision between multiple people. There's multiple opinions, and now the family has to deal with something that that person who passed away could have relieved the family of with having structure. Woo! You can see I'm getting heated about it because it's not a conversation that I think about a lot. It's not a topic that I desire to go, my brain, I don't want to go, okay, let's realistically think. George, if the baby is born and we both die, who do we feel is mentally, physically, financially available to take care of this child, also has the philosophy and the values that we have to bring up this child, like, and then, or 10 years from now, all these things, right? So, I'm just like, when you're listening to someone that is an expert of a field that is so different from yours, and they are using these long technical terms, and they are speaking at rapid pace because there's so much information coming out, and they also are so proficient in this dialogue that it's so fluid for them, and you are just grasping. You are just grasping for understanding. You are just grasping to, you're like, I feel like a child just trying to take in a new world. I'm like, okay, I got this. I'm listening. I have like the biggest listening ears on. I'm remaining open, but then at the same time, she says something like, and you both die, who's your guardian? Then all of a sudden my listening ears like, and then all of a sudden I'm like, even just doing this, it's all in my head. I'm like, oh my God, George and I are to die. And then our child is left. And then all of a sudden I lose her, but she keeps talking. And then I'm like, listening ears back on again. You have to keep listening. It's just like, oh my God, you get glossy eyed, but then at the same time, you need to be clear visioned because this is important shit. What I'm saying is, I'm very excited. As much as I'm like overwhelmed, I'm really excited that we're having these conversations because I've never had a will. Guys, I still have people in my life that matter, and I never put a will in place for myself. I'm 34. I've never taken the time to think about what would happen to my life, the people around my life, if my life were to be over sooner than I want it to be, or even when it's meant to be over in the future. Well, whenever my life ends is when it's meant to be. Let's just say that, but you know what I mean. I've never spent the time to really think about that. And this even goes down to stuff about even being like in a disabled position to make decisions for myself. So what if I were to get into a coma, or if I were to be on life support? How do I want my family, do I want to leave that conversation up to my loved ones to decide? And have that dialogue with, what kind of turmoil might that create my family when they're already in emotional distress from me being on life support? These decisions might feel uncomfortable, and these realities might be really challenging to think of as like actual potential circumstances. But I'm in a scenario right now where I'm not dealing with emotional trauma and crazy life things, that I can have this conversation with a clear head, and we can take our time, George and I, talking through these and, just coming up with scenarios that we believe are right for us now. And where she relieved a lot of pressure for us, the woman that was giving us this talk, was saying, you can change this 1,000,000 times. You can change this paperwork for your trust, your assets, your life, your will, your donor, whatever you want to donate. You can change this over and over and over. So I advise you, these are her words, I advise you right now to think about your life right now. If this were to have happened yesterday, if these things were to have happened yesterday, what would you wish you had put in place if they happened yesterday, with all the assets you have now, with everything that's just happening right now? And then every 5 years at least, look again at the life that you have in 5 years and say, what do we need to adjust? And be consistently reflecting and adjusting as the life progresses without needing to put so much pressure right now on the zillion future potential circumstances that you want to try to plan for. That is very daunting. And so it relieved me a lot of pressure at the end of the call when she said, just think about all the scenarios if they were to have happened yesterday. What would you have wanted and what would you have wanted to be in place yesterday? So that really helped. And that reminder of just being consistent every few years, at least 5 years, checking back in. She's like, because somebody that you're gonna, all the things that you think about now and are like so set on now, they are going to change. They are going to change. So it's a waste of energy to really think so far ahead when you have the opportunity to constantly adjust, to constantly reflect and adjust. So, as much as this conversation might have seemed like high-strung and overwhelming at first, it did lead to a nice result of, I can always change it. I can change it as much as I want. So what is the harm in making a decision today or in the next few days after we have these legit, real conversations and putting something in place right now and not waiting? Not only is it about us and the immediate family right here in our house, relieving the pressure of that stress and those decision makings if something traumatic were to happen, but it's also the entire extended family. And I feel so excited about relieving them of the duties to have to decide on things that I could have helped with just by being prepared, just by creating structure. And having this human growing in my belly is just this constant reminder of how important it is to set things in place for new life to thrive or life that already exists to thrive, and how, beautiful the responsibility is that I have to lay down a really awesome nest. And that nest is not just of love and of security and safety and support, but it's also of structure and of planning and of really putting things in place so that that love, support, stability, safety is also in place when something traumatic and unexpected happens. I'm getting there, baby. I'm getting there, cub. I'm doing the things. I'm doing all the adulting things. I'm gonna have a stinking will.